most of our family come from Brody. Brody was a very unusual city. They were like, at one time, they were a free city. They didn't belong to anybody. So if anybody wanted to trade, they used to come through Brody, and they did all their trading. Brody belonged to 3 different countries at one time. Originally they were Austro-Hungary. Then after the First World War, they became Poland. And then today they're Ukraine.
Right.
Okay. So practically all of our family comes from Brody. But during the war, there used to be a run around, pushed out here and there. But then when it was all over, everybody came back to Brody. Okay. The Glanzes started with our father, Shammai Glanz, okay? And they were siblings. There was Shama and Chili and Zygmunt, but mostly everybody that we're concerned with, my sisters Rose and Etka and myself and Moshe and Omek, and we're all, from Shama Glanz, okay? Right. Shama, and now he was married originally to Rivela, okay? Now Rivela,
1 second.
The offspring from Rivela and Shammai is your
grandmother,
and Etka, and Bernard.
Is he still living in Chicago?
Bernard is dead. He's gone. And who else? Is somebody else that I know. That's all, I guess, Now that was the first wife. That's Shammai's first wife. Now his second wife is my mother, and she actually took care of, for a while, of your grandmother and your grand aunt Etka and Bernard until they left and went to the United States, So that takes care of the siblings,
What was Brody like when you grew up there?
Huh?
What was Brody like?
Brody was a town of about 25,000 people, and they mostly agricultural. Mostly they made from wheat. They made a lot of flour mills. They used to trade in flour, and cows and wheat and things like that, But also was like a trading town, where they traded in between the countries. You see. So it was like at one time it was like a free town, free city. Okay.
And your father did what kind of work? Shammai did?
Shammai, he did. He worked in a brewery, and just exactly what he did there, I don't know. But he was not a very wealthy man, but he managed. He was a very nice guy. Okay, and you have any questions now? Now he married Toba, which was my mother, and they had several children, actually 5 boys, but 3 remained. The other 2 died young. One of them, the name was Fowler, they died. So there's 3 of us, Moshe, Omek, Abraham actually, and myself. Now I have 3 names too. I have Alexander, but also Zygmunt, which is after the other sibling of Shammai's, one of his brothers was Zygmunt, and he died. So my middle name was Zygmunt, and they used to be, it's called Zygmunt is actually Ziskind, called me Ziskind is the real name of Zygmunt. Zygmunt is the Polish version. But most people called me Zisha. Didn't even call me Alexander, but I became officially Alexander when I came to this country, and I was about 13 and a half years old.
And that was when?
Well, that was in 1932. Now what happened there was this. My mother was a midwife, a very popular midwife, very good in her profession. She learned it in Lemberg. Okay? And she had one bad situation. She brought about 2,500 babies to this world.
Wow.
Very popular.
Wow.
Yeah. But she had one bad case where 2 women died from some kind of a disease that went around, and she took it very hard. And that's when she decided to come to this country. Now, in those days, not everybody could come here. They had specific laws. A mother could come to a son to a mother, but a brother could not come to a brother. There was no law to where I could have come to Bernard. You know, I couldn't. So I had to wait till my mother was brought over by Bernard Glanz.
And then
She
the rest
came
of
over here in 1929, and then she brought me over 3 years later in 1932. So that's
And you-
when I came over. By that time she was married and a citizen, and she was able to bring me over.
And you came through New York?
Came through New York, Ellis Island.
Yep.
And
Ellis
was
Island.
Rose already here? Her grandmother? Do you know?
Rose.
Yeah, because grandmom was born in 33.
Rose was already,
Yeah.
they were living in Washington, PA for a long, long time, you know. Okay. Well, from that time on, many, many things happened, you know. But my mother got married, and then he died, Cutler in California, PA. That was the first town that I came to in this country. And I
From
was
New York.
about
Yeah.
13 and a half years old.
Now, who was here? Why did you come to California, PA?
Because my mother remarried a man by the name of Cutler, who was a big wheel in California, PA. He had a lot of properties over there. And then he died. And then she had to move out of California and move into Pittsburgh. We both moved into Pittsburgh, you know. And she married again. And she moved out into Natrona, PA, the man that she married. And I wound up living with my aunt, which was one of the 5 children of let's say, Brocha, Brocha Shapiro. Brocha Shapiro married a Yankele Berger, a Jacob Berger, you see.
And Brocha was your aunt?
My Brocha Shapiro was my grandmother,
Your grandmother?
see. Now, so you know, there was 5 children from between Brocha and Jacob Berger, you see. Now this book here in front of us, you know, this could go on. I could tell you a lot more. You know, the family spread out, and there must be about a couple thousand people and descendants, and you're among them.
Sure.
And we have great-grandchildren now and all that stuff. So what else can I tell you? That this book is one of the nicest things that's put together.
Yeah.
And if you really want to know the details, you can go further than this.
Tell
But
us.
if there's any questions that comes to your mind, because I can't just, you know, I'm not prepared.
Tell us the story about your
to tell you
brothers.
the whole story. Well,
I mean, those are really interesting stories. If
my
you're
brother,
comfortable.
okay, all right. There's a very interesting story about my oldest brother. My oldest brother, he was a printer, very good printer in Europe, and then he was drafted in the Polish army, and he was a soldier for a while, and then when when Hitler divided Poland into two parts with Stalin, they made a deal where they divided Poland into two parts. Then part of it went to Russia, part of it went to Germany. That's when my oldest brother wound up in the Russian side. And also my younger brother wound up on the Russian side. He wound up in Siberia, somewhere working for the Russians in the coal mine in Siberia. But my older brother, a couple of Russians came down. They knew that he was a soldier in the Polish army. They needed men. They came down to the house. They told them to pack up and join the Russian army. And at one point, they thought that he was reaching for a gun. Killed him.
Oh.
That's how he died. And most of the rest of the family died in the Holocaust. But we have a lot of descendants, descendants that are still alive, and everybody's alive, and so on. So, anything else that you can think of that you want to ask me?
Sure. Tell us about when you were growing up here and what you did and.
Well, while I was growing up here, as I was telling you, my mother wound up in Trona, PA, with her new husband, Kubra, and they had a store over there. So I didn't go with them. I stayed with my Aunt Emma. And I became an apprentice over with my uncle, Uncle Berger. Uncle Max Berger had a printing shop, and that's how I started my career as a printer. And I stayed with my aunt as long as I could until, and then when I got to be around 23, I got drafted to the Army. And I got a lot of pictures of that. And all those things. So what else?
Do you know any stories about Rania? That would be your grandmother.
Rania, there's Rania and Bina, who were the siblings of Bruche Shapiro. And their descendants, they wound up in Canada. So I don't know that much about Rania and Bina. And one of them, two offsprings of Dobrich. There was a Dobrich too, And the two offspring from Dobrich, one is called Clara Nussbaum and Frieda Rothmel. There's so many names here, that, but I think this book that Merle put together, anything that you want to know,
she did a fabulous job.
So if there's anything that you can't understand in this book, I'll be very glad to tell you.
Tell us about your sister.
You're talking Etka?
No, Rose.
Oh, Rose. Well, Rose, I never really knew too much about Rose except because she was here most of her life while I was elsewhere. So the only time I used to come, as when I was a kid, I stayed for 3, 4, sometimes 2, 3 weeks vacation in Washington, PA, and Sydney and Murray. We used to play together, things like that.
She was much older than you.
Yeah.
So you didn't have.
Yeah, I say so. Like my two other brothers were also much older than I was. I was the youngest. Moshe was 10, 13 years older, and Omik was 11 years older.
When you were born.
Huh?
When you were born.
When I was born, So we have some very nice pictures I'd like to show you.
Yeah.
You also told us a good story about Edka.
Oh yeah, Edka, okay. I can tell you some very nice things about it. Okay, we used to visit Edka a lot in Europe. Moshe was very close to Edka. And we used to go to Edka's house, and they had one of the most beautiful homes you could possibly have. They were very well to do. One of the reasons they got killed because they were so well off that they didn't feel like leaving. You say, hey, what can happen, Well, they didn't know what was going to happen, Well, they had a store where they sold electric supplies already. They sold bicycles, things like that, and she took care of the store. And her husband was a banker. His name was Brutchinger. They were Brutchinger, And he was one heck of a nice guy. children, the kid's name was Bolek, two nice kids, and the girl's name is Cheche. She looked just like her mother. So that's what I know about her.
And Edka and Rose looked a lot alike, is that right?
Looked a lot like Rose. They're very much alike. Well, Edka was considered very beautiful. She was the town beauty. She was a very beautiful girl. Edka, you know.
Or
What
about
can I tell you
Rivella?
about my father?
I don't know, like...
About Rivella, that one of his first wife, you know, and that part I don't know too much about, except that
And he died.
Except that they produced Edka and Bernard.
And you said he had died by...
He died from a
epidemic.
typhus epidemic, shaman, my father, and your...
What year was that? You know?
When he was 55, it was, let's see, I was a year and a half old. I was born 1930, 1918, so must have been 1920. So around 1920.
Wow.
I didn't die from heart or anything.
You didn't know that?
Natural, he died from an epidemic, you know.
And what about, you said you had two other brothers, but they died? They died as infants?
Well,
or?
they died as infants, yeah. One of his name was Pavel and the other one I don't know. But they died when they were just like several months old, you know. So there were only three of us, you know. And then, and I know I'm the only survivor of the three of us.
And your other sister's name was?
Edka.
Edka.
Edka, yeah.
And were you close to her?
Yeah, well, I would
Yes.
say so. As a matter of fact, my mother, which was her stepmother, she helped bring her up when she was small, because my father was gone, you know, and somebody had to take care of her, you know, and Rivella was also died.
You said your father was Reformed? A Reformed
No,
Jew?
my father was not Reformed, but he was not
Or-
Orthodox. He was not real Orthodox, you know. And they had two beautiful shuls in the Brody, you know. One called the Old Shul was a real, what they call it, you know, a real, I can't think of the word. You know.
Ornate? Very.
Landmark.
Oh.
A real landmark. Think of the word. It was a real landmark, sure. You know, I mean, like today they put a landmark thing on it.
Now, did you know Dov Sudan?
Yeah.
You knew him?
As a matter of fact, we had Dov Sudan in this house.
Oh, really?
When he came over, we had a nice meal there, and we visited him in the Webster Hotel, and we saw him. He gave a lecture in the Y, and when he was here, and he's one of, you know, I'll show you. I have a couple others here. He just gave me those books. And oh yeah, and when I was
Had a son named Dov.
That's him up here.
yeah, that's the Dove. And the thing is, the Dove had three half brothers, you know, as Omek also, you know, and Nissen and Shillik, the three brothers, and they were nice guys. They were also very good, you know. And Dove has a son. His name is Ezra.
We met him in Israel.
We did?
And this Ezra is a very important guy in Israel. He was a Secretary of Commerce at one time. Very, very important. Okay, Russia. His wife and child remained behind, and they got killed by the Nazis. So he was saved because he was on the Russian side, and the Russians drafted him not into the army, but to work. He worked in the mine or something like that. And of course, my older brother, you know, I told you how he was killed.
Yes. But then he married, Omek married his
He
first
married
cousin.
Ethel.
Well, Frida Weiss?
Oh, Frida, yeah, his cousin. His second cousin.
His second cousin. Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, she was after him, I remember when I was a kid, and she was after him. and he didn't have a chance, you know. And they wound up in Israel, you know, together, you know. she got.
She went back to visit
They
her family.
went back to Poland and got caught in the Holocaust. They were visiting. They come back visiting innocently, and they got caught.
Very sad.
Yeah. And Moshe didn't leave because he had it good too. He was a foreman in a print shop, and they didn't have enough sense to get out there. So I can show you some pictures
Yeah.
now from the
Okay.
albums, you know.